Imagine a single, nondescript container ship. It is drifting slowly through the Gatun Lake in the heart of Panama. Suddenly, the engines fail. Or perhaps the water levels, already at historic lows in early 2026, drop just a few inches too far. The ship grounds. It wedges itself across the narrowest point of the Culebra Cut. In an instant, the world's most important shortcut is severed. This isn't just a maritime accident. It is the beginning of a global economic cardiac arrest. If the Panama Canal shuts down tomorrow, the ripple effects will reach your doorstep faster than a prime delivery. You probably don't think about Panama when you're walking down the aisles of a grocery store in Ohio or a Target in Savannah. But you should. Right now, 40% of all U.S. container traffic, everything from the shoes on your feet to the components in your smartphone, passes through this 50-mile stretch of water. It is the jugular vein of American commerce. If that vein is pinched, the countdown begins. By day 3, the queues of massive Neo-Panamax vessels outside the Cullen and Panama City terminals stretch for miles. By day 7, global shipping rates for the remaining routes begin to double. By day 14, the empty shelf syndrome hits New York, Baltimore, and Charleston. But here's where it gets even worse. This isn't just about delayed sneakers. We are looking at a total energy catastrophe. The Panama Canal is the primary exit ramp for American liquefied natural gas, or LNG, heading to the massive markets in Asia. Without this shortcut, a tanker leaving the Gulf Coast of Texas has to sail all the way around the tip of South America or across the Atlantic and through the Suez Canal. That adds weeks to the journey. It adds millions in fuel costs. In a world where energy markets are already tightly wound, this delay causes a massive spike in heating and electricity costs globally. Your utility bill in January doesn't just go up, it explodes. We take the Panama Canal for granted because it feels like a permanent feature of the Earth. It isn't. It is a fragile, gravity-fed machine. Every single time a ship passes through those locks, 50 million gallons of fresh water are flushed out into the ocean. That water comes from Gatun Lake. If the rains don't come, the canal doesn't work. As we sit here in 2026, Panama is desperately trying to engineer its way out of this nightmare. They have officially broken ground on the Rio Indio Reservoir project. It is a $1.6 billion survival plan designed to dam a new river and pipe water into the canal system. But that project won't be ready for years. If the shutdown happens tomorrow, Panama's survival plan is just a hole in the ground. So where does the cargo go? If the water route is dead, the world looks to the land bridge. This is the massive network of railways and highways stretching across the United States. In theory, you could just offload those ships in Los Angeles or Long Beach and put the containers on trains heading east. But there is a massive problem. The American rail system is already operating near capacity. To absorb the 40% of traffic diverted from Panama, we would need thousands of new locomotives and tens of thousands of new truck drivers overnight. They don't exist. The result is a brutal spike in domestic logistics costs. We are talking about a 300% increase in the price of moving a single container across the country. Because demand for rail and trucking space would far outstrip supply, only the highest margin goods would move. Your luxury electronics might make it through, but the low-cost essentials, the bulk grains, the construction materials, the cheap household plastics, they get stuck. They become uneconomical to ship. This is how a local maritime blockage in Central America turns into a permanent inflationary death spiral for the American consumer. But here's where it gets even worse. The world isn't just waiting for the U.S. to fix its railways. Our neighbors to the south have been watching Panama's struggle with drought, and they are ready to pounce. As we move through early 2026, Mexico is nearing the completion of a massive rival, the interoceanic corridor of the Isthmus of Tehuantepec. This is Mexico's dry canal. It is a high-speed rail and highway corridor connecting the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans at Mexico's narrowest point. If Panama fails tomorrow, the geopolitical gravity of the entire Western Hemisphere shifts toward Mexico City. Global shipping giants like Maersk and MSC wouldn't just wait for Panama to fix its locks. They would pivot their entire logistics hubs to the Mexican corridor. This would be a generational shift in power. For over a century, the U.S. has viewed the Panama Canal as its own private front door. If that door locks and the key moves to Mexico, the U.S. loses its primary lever of control over global trade routes. The immediate shock to the just-in-time delivery model would be total. For 30 years, the global economy has been built on the idea that parts and products are always moving. We don't keep large inventories anymore. We keep them on ships. If those ships stop, the factory lines in the Midwest stop within 48 hours because they are missing a single specialized component from Japan or South Korea. This is the fragility of our modern existence. We have traded resilience for efficiency, and Panama is the point of failure. Let's look at the numbers. A standard vessel carries roughly 15,000 containers. To move that much cargo by land, you would need roughly 8,000 trucks. Now imagine the 300 ships currently waiting to transit the canal. That is over 2 million trucks worth of cargo suddenly looking for a road. The highway system between Los Angeles and New York would effectively turn into a permanent, slow-moving parking lot. The carbon footprint of your morning coffee would triple as it sits in idling traffic. But here's where it gets even worse. The Panama Canal isn't just a trade route, it is a vital military corridor. The U.S. Navy relies on the ability to move assets between the Atlantic and Pacific fleets quickly. If a crisis erupts in the South China Sea at the same moment the canal shuts down, the U.S. Atlantic Fleet has to take the long way around Cape Horn. That adds 12,000 miles to the trip. In a modern conflict, 12,000 miles is the difference between a successful intervention and a total strategic defeat. The canal is the backbone of American power projection. Without it, the U.S. is a two-ocean power that can only fight in one ocean at a time. This strategic paralysis would be exploited by every rival on the global stage. While the U.S. scrambles to reroute its destroyers, the cost of securing global shipping lanes would skyrocket. Private insurance companies would stop covering vessels transiting contested waters without a naval escort. If the U.S. Navy is physically separated by a continent, those escorts don't happen. Global trade doesn't just slow down, it stops. We are talking about a total breakdown of the maritime security order that has existed since 1945. Furthermore, the domestic political fallout would be instantaneous. Imagine the scene at the port of Savannah. Thousands of longshoremen with no ships to unload, truckers sitting idle in Texas because the fuel they need is being diverted to emergency rail lines in the north. When the supply chain snaps, it doesn't just affect prices, it affects social stability. We saw the cracks during the pandemic, but a Panama shutdown in 2026 would be those cracks turning into a canyon. The government would be forced to implement emergency rationing for certain electronics and energy-intensive goods just to prevent total market collapse. As we look at the reality of 2026, the threats to the canal are no longer just theoretical. Between the increasing frequency of El Niño-driven droughts and the rising cost of the Rio Indio project, the canal is more vulnerable than it has ever been. We are living through a period where the geographic shortcuts we built in the 20th century are failing to meet the climate and logistical demands of the 21st. If the canal shuts down tomorrow, the golden age of cheap, fast global shipping ends with it. You would feel it first in the small things. You'd go to buy a replacement part for your car, and the mechanic would tell you it's on back order for 6 months. You'd notice the price of a gallon of milk creeping up every week because the diesel fuel for the delivery truck is costing the dairy farmer 4 times what it did last month. You'd see the out-of-stock labels on your favorite websites becoming permanent. This is the deglobalization of the American lifestyle, forced upon us by 50 miles of dry tropical earth. The Panama Canal was once called the eighth wonder of the world. It was a monument to human engineering over nature. But in 2026, nature is fighting back. The shutdown isn't an if scenario. For many logistics experts, it is a when. Whether it's a mechanical failure, a drought, or a geopolitical conflict, the result is the same. The world's most important shortcut is a single point of failure for the American dream. We are one stuck ship or one dry season away from a total economic reset. And as the sun sets over the Gatun Lake today, the ships are still moving. For now. But the water is lower than it was yesterday. The queues are longer, and the alternative routes are still under construction. We are currently flying a massive, complex global economy on a single engine, and that engine is located in a small, mountainous country in Central America. If it cuts out tomorrow, the world will find out just how fragile our connection to each other truly is. The shelves will go empty, the lights will flicker, and the map of the world will be redrawn, not by generals, but by the absence of water. Stay tuned, because the next 14 days could change everything.